Today, we're on our second week of the theme called Half-Truths, which is a book by Adam Hamilton. You can also think of it as cliche theology, those phrases that Christians have said for generations. Nobody knows where they started, they're not in the Bible, and they're really not all that true. So there's a range of these statements, and this is just a short list that Adam happened to write about. Last week we talked about that everything happens for a reason. Yes, that's true. Sometimes the reason is you did a stupid thing, and that's why that happened. We're not talking about this God-ordained decision that was made. And this week we're looking at God helps those who help themselves. Not in the Bible. Not even true. So, that's what we're going to look at today. And other cliches that come along. And I'm going to let Chris tell you about the board.
Well, I put it up so I could tell you about it, I guess. This board is just outside the sanctuary, and it's to the right as you exit. And Adam Hamilton in his book talks about how it was very difficult for him to narrow down these cliche theologies to just 5. He picked 5 to write about in his book, but there are all kinds of things out there, like God needed another angel in heaven. Have you heard that one? Things like that are come up that I'm sure you've heard. You might have even said yourself, it's okay, don't beat yourself up. There are things that we fall back on when we don't know what to say. But when we start to take a closer look at what these half-truths are about, then we're very intentional about what we say, and we say what we mean then instead of saying just whatever comes to mind, because oftentimes whatever comes to mind sometimes can come back to bite you. It's not true, and it doesn't make the person feel any better, and it just is not helpful for you either. So the whole situation can get really scary really fast. So paying attention to what you actually say matters. And that's why we're putting them up on the half-truth board, because everybody's done it. I do it all the time. Pastoral care people do it all the time. Everybody does it. So we need to be more intentional about stopping ourselves from doing that, and sometimes just sitting quietly with people is enough. You don't have to say a thing. It's better to say nothing than the wrong thing. So we're going to make a whole list of things that aren't really helpful, and it comes from you guys what those words are. Last week I heard when I left the sanctuary something that really struck me, and I thought, oh, how terrible. One of the phrases that somebody told me after having lost a child said, somebody told them, that child was never really yours anyway. Think of the pain that causes when you didn't mean it to. You were trying to bring comfort, you were trying to be careful, you were trying to care for the other person, and what you've done is just cause a tremendous amount of pain and frustration and anger with God, when that wasn't your intention at all. So we need to think about what we say. We're keeping the board. Put it up there. All those bad things that you've heard people say to you, all the bad things that you've said to other people and realized later that you wish you hadn't, those are the things we need. So get out there and write on the board. That's what it's for. Okay, now that I've given a nice lecture and taken time away from Will's sermon,
just talk about the board.
The board is right out there. You can write those truths on there and pin it on the board so we all know what those truths are. Our scripture today is going to be a series of small individual verses that speak to the conversation that God has about helping other people in the direct face of our half-truth today that says God helps those who help themselves. So the very first couple of our scriptures come from the Gospel of John. In the 12th verse, you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. And from 1 John, how does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or sister in need and yet refuses to help them or has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person?
Sometimes I get disappointed by the things that Jesus says, like that you'll always have the poor among you. And you want him to say, we're going to do something about poverty. We're going to change the system. But the reality is we still have the poor among us. I've been in youth ministry for 20-something years. And one of the common concepts that I hear, and I've heard over the years, when students from kind of a more affluent church look at people that are poor or people that are homeless or near homeless, and they kind of think to themselves, get a job. Just do something about your situation. Maybe you're choosing to be in that position. I think our kids get so trained to do well in school, to get good jobs, to be responsible, that it's hard for them to make the switch and say, well, what happened to this person? Obviously, something happened. Nobody wants to be in that situation. But we sometimes have this kind of judgmentalism about people who make bad decisions, about people who can't get out of the messes that they've made for themselves. I'm not a math major, but there's a lot of people in poverty. So this is a global statistic that 700 million people, or 9.6% of the global population, lives on $1.90 or less a day. That's a Starbucks every 2 or 3 days. Globally, 1.2 billion people, 22%, live on less than $1.25 a day. So we're kind of in the minority living on more than $1.25. They say that 50% of Americans couldn't handle a $400 crisis. That $400 would actually put them into a very difficult position. So it's not just a world thing. In the U.S., 46.7 million people were in poverty, and 15.5 million children under the age of 18 were in poverty. That is a lot of poor people. A lot. Maybe this is like a guiding verse for us to remember today as we think about this cliche this week, God helps those that help themselves. What does the Lord require of us? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. There's two kinds of help, mercy and justice. And we're going to talk about mercy first. Do you ever drive down the street and maybe you get to an intersection at 72nd and Dodge or 90th and Dodge or Maple and 680, and you see somebody sitting there with a sign? I think the number of people that are doing that is really rising. I mean, every day you see people with the sign. It used to be once in a while, but now it's like every day at multiple locations, which means the problems are actually getting worse. So what do you do when you see somebody like this? What goes through your head? I think from the old youth ministry perspective, there's a lot of people that are thinking, get a job. Stop smoking crack. Do something different. And sometimes people are just in a spot where they can't do something different. And I don't know that the help we offer always has the requirement of good results. Sometimes the help we offer is because we're supposed to help. So this is my friend Tammy, who worked in the Open Door Mission. She was a case manager, which means she tried to help get people back on their feet and get them through a difficult time. So when I found out she was a caseworker, I said, so do you have like a a drawer in your desk that's for all the successes that you've had as a caseworker, and then you have a drawer. The other drawer is like all the failed attempts at helping somebody restore their life. And she said to me, "You don't really need the success drawer." You know, that's how grim it was working to try to help people into a new situation. They're just stuck. And she found it really frustrating. One Thanksgiving, some college friends of mine and I, when we were in college in Chicago, thought it would be really great to make Thanksgiving dinner for anyone. So we got together and we made all the food. And then we went out and tried to get people to come. So we drove around the neighborhoods around where we were in Chicago, and we'd see somebody, you know, that looked like they could use a meal. And we'd slide open the door. We'd be like, "Do you want to come in for Thanksgiving dinner?" And they said, "No." "You're not hungry? What?" So we got back to the apartment, and we're like, why didn't we got no responses? Nobody stepped into that van. That van. I think it hit one of us like, maybe we used the wrong vehicle to go pick people up. But we did something. We were trying to do something, you know. We were trying to practice some mercy. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that. And I know this church has a great history of practicing mercy, and you do such a good job of it. These organizations together, yes, Heartland Hope, Community Cupboard, they do a lot of mercy work. They pass out food, they pass out clothes, they set people up in apartments. It's a lot of like helping the needs that are there. But underneath some of these organizations, and probably all of them, there's a strong desire to see things change. You know, you hear the numbers of places like Heartland Hope and Together. We're serving 20,000 more people than we did 5 years ago. Terrible. Terrible. Your organization might be rocking, but awful. So we want to change, you know, what's going on. That's justice work. Finding out where the problem started and making it different. We need to be doing both, because obviously it's not all going to change overnight. We need mercy work, but we need justice work. And these organizations are great representatives of that. So I went to, sorry, Nick. I went to 90th and, 72nd and Dodge, and I talked to 3 people. I paid them $5 for an interview. They were most happy to receive it. And I was just kind of getting a feel, you know, what do you think about the phrase, God helps those that help themselves, you know? Do you like being out here? And here's what they said. If I click it, you're just going to click it again. Hello. What are you doing out here on 72nd and Dodge?
Flying a sign.
Why are you flying a sign?
Homeless and stranded.
I've been out here for about a month and a half flying a sign.
Wow. How often do you come to this spot?
3 times a week.
Really?
Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. I can't get a job because I have lung cancer. My husband is actually fighting the VA to get his benefits because he served our country and now the government doesn't want to pay him. So we're having to be out here flying signs.
I'm out here trying to get some money.
Yeah.
For food.
How's it working?
It's not working.
Oh,
The most I've ever gotten was $110.
I've made 30, but this is my 3rd time out here.
no. Wow.
And that was on my birthday. No, and I didn't even tell anybody it was my birthday. It just happened to be that way.
Have you ever heard the phrase, God helps those that help themselves?
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
it's a pretty good phrase. That's about it.
You like that phrase?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
That,
Why do you like it?
I've heard it a lot.
I think it's a wonderful phrase. You know, doesn't seem like I'm doing much, but to me, I am. Because there's times where I'll give back to even cars when I see that they're sitting here fanning themselves. I'll give them one of the bottle of waters I got.
Have you ever heard the phrase, God helps those who help themselves?
Oh, I heard he did. I heard he had a second helping, and he had a like an aneurysm in his liver. And
Really?
so yeah, and then he touched somebody, and then they like their head exploded.
It's tough. It's tough, especially as women, to stand out here and do this.
Yeah.
Not everybody's nice.
Yeah.
I've been propositioned, called names, a burden. I used to work.
Yeah.
I had a job since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 40. When you find out you can't ever work again, it takes a toll on you. But what else are we supposed to do? Starve?
Nobody likes to be in that position. You know, I think one of those youth ministry concepts from the past was, oh, that guy's got a regular house and this is just his income source. You know, he chooses to panhandle for income. I don't think so. I don't think anybody wants to be out there. It's rough. People are not nice. Sometimes you get a nice person to come along and video you and give you $5, but most of the time they're getting insulted. It's demoralizing. It's demeaning. So when we see these people, what excuse do you make up to not help somebody? For me, it's like I don't have the time. I don't know that my contribution would make any kind of difference at all. Maybe I just don't think the person, you know, is pleasant, so maybe I don't want to interact with them. What's your excuse?
From Proverbs chapter 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own insight.
Well, the problem is that we live in an unfair society, and it's always been that way. And nobody really ever helps themselves. You know, they make bad decisions and they get themselves in a pickle, and it's really hard to get out of it. You know, people just kind of mess up in the same way, and they don't really help themselves. So I don't see how that cliche theology even works. God helps those who help themselves. So what, does God help nobody? That's tough. Justice, on the other hand, instead of mercy or with mercy is to act or to treat justly or fairly, to change the systems of why people have problems. Albert Einstein said problems cannot be solved with the same mindset that created them. Have you ever brainstormed how to solve a problem? Well, the first thing you should do is look at how you've tried to solve it in the past and it didn't work. And then not pick one of those to be your next solution to the problem. I think that's what Einstein's saying, except he's saying even more, we don't have the material to get ourselves out of the problem. We had the material to get ourselves into the problem. But there is justice that happens. It's not just globally, but people advocating for change. And we've seen great changes over the last few years. In fact, people recognize that salaries were still in the 80s, and the cost of living has gone through the roof. So there's a huge movement to change the minimum wage, and they've made progress. Not a ton of progress, but they've made some progress. And to me, that's justice, because you're not just handing out money. You're saying you're going to earn more. You're going to be able to take care of yourself, get yourself on your feet. People were denied medical insurance and all kinds of rights, and people were outraged and made a movement to make marriage equality legal on a federal level. Huge accomplishment. Huge justice accomplishment for all the troubles that were there before. Countless troubles. Huge justice movement. We're not done. Our church has an organization we call it FATE. It's kind of a weird word for it, but Faith in the Environment. And it's not just about recycling and cleaning up and washing cups after services, but it's actually a justice movement to say, who are the people that are going to be affected the worst by environmental changes? It's going to be the poor, And so if we can change the way we treat the world, it's possible that we will bring justice in that way. So Faith and Environment is really a very justice-minded group. Now, you've all heard this one, right? You give a man a fish to feed him for a day, or you teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. It's the simple mercy versus justice. Find out what the problem is, where it started, change it. We all have to work on that. We need to be about justice. We need to fight. We need advocacy. But this picture really reminds me of the Boundary Waters, where I will be tomorrow evening with 24 students. Won't be that peaceful like that. It'll be more like, ah! But we're taking a canoe that Carrie's father made out of cedar. He caned the whole canoe, and it's beautiful. And we're going to take it with us to the Boundary Waters and lug it around and float in it, hopefully. We haven't tested it. But we're really excited about it. If you want to get updates, we actually have a device that will send a satellite link text. So you can get a text update of how the trip is going, and you get our coordinates on a little map and stuff. So if anybody wants that, just give me your phone number after the service. So anyways, think about your experience, your contacts, the people that you're connected to, your influence, and think about what can you do to practice more justice.
From the law of the Torah, Leviticus 23. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and for the alien. I am the Lord your God.
In first century Palestine, the law said that when you plant your fields, you leave the edges alone. You don't harvest the edges so that people can come by and eat food. It's kind of a good thing for people. Definitely an act of mercy, maybe even justice. And it was the law. That's what you were supposed to do. So when that phrase says, God helps those who help themselves, there's the other aspect of it, not just that people don't help themselves, but like, what does that look like? So you pray, God, help me. And then like, boom, something comes down from the sky and you're all fixed. You're like, thank you. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to involve anybody else. I just wanted, a little private restoration. Thank you. But you know what would happen if it worked like that. I mean, you just do the same dumb thing again, and then you'd be like, God, help me. Boom, done. Helped you again. You only got 7 more times. No, but what happens is the way God helps you is by getting other people to help you. That's what this law is all about. It's about a community effort to take care of everybody, not just our people, but foreigners, aliens, strangers. That's what we're called to do. So you know the story of the guy stranded out on a boat, and he cries out, Lord, save me. I'm stranded, I'm going to drown. And so this other boat pulls up, says, hey, we're here to rescue you. Oh, no thanks. God's going to provide the help. You know this story, don't you? So then another boat pulls up. We're here to rescue you. No thanks. The Lord will provide. And then they go away. And then a third boat comes up. We're here to rescue you. Oh, no thanks. God's got it. So then, as the story goes, the man dies and then goes to meet God. Why didn't you rescue me when I was out drowning? I sent 3 people to rescue you. You didn't take it. And that's kind of the way it works. In Isaiah, the prophet says, then I heard a voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here am I, send me. Who's going to change this world? You are. We are. It takes that human effort. That's the way that God works. How do you see yourself as God's answer?
In mercy and in justice work, we know how to go about doing this because we have an example. Jesus has told us time and time again to love our neighbor, to care for the widow and the orphan, to be that love in the world for another, as he was. In the night in which he was betrayed, he took bread, he broke it, and he gave it to eat, saying, this is my body, given for you. Do this for the remembrance of me. And again, after supper, he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to all to drink, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all people. For as often as you eat of this bread and drink of this cup, you do this in remembrance of me. in remembrance of his love, his compassion, his care, and his nurture for life. No rules, no boundaries, no judgments, just love. That's mercy. And that's justice. And we remember that in this meal. You are all welcome to participate in this meal. You do not have to be a member of Countryside to participate. You do not have to believe in any particular creed or doctrine. All you need is a willingness to meet the Spirit here in this place of love, in this place of acceptance for all people. You are all welcome to be with us. And if you choose to stay in your seat, you can participate from there. Just raise your hand and one of our servers will bring communion to you. Or if you decide to come forward, you're welcome to do that. And if you do, please take a piece of the loaf and dip it in the juice. And as you take it inside of yourself, remember that God loves you and sees you as the creation that saves all other creation through love, through mercy, through compassion, and through justice. And if you decide not to participate at all, know that you are still loved and welcomed here and everywhere by all of God's children. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. As our servers come forward to prepare the meal, let us remember who we are as a community of God's love. We are an open and affirming family of faith, welcoming all to God's table of love and acceptance. We are diverse, yet united by Christ's example. We care for one another, support one another, and challenge one another to become all that God creates us to be. We work together to nurture our community and to promote peace and justice in our conflicted world. Amen. Please come.